What's going on, everyone? So in today's video, we're going to go over the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, the Russell, Bitcoin, Ethereum, crude oil, the dollar, and of course, we're going to talk about the mother of all earnings weeks and the implications that these stocks' earnings will have on the broader market. All right, so let's get right into it. All right, so this is the S&P 500 on a 15-minute chart. I said that the resistance would be at 418.50. And as you can see today, it didn't cross above 418.50, and we were trading in a very tight, small range the entire day, close to basically less than $1.50 the entire day, which is very, very unheard of, given the huge fluctuations in the S&P 500's price movement in the past few weeks, right? So the SPY today was just very, very stagnant, and a lot of it has to do with the anticipation of the earnings. Okay. So obviously, since the range was extremely tight, the new resistance level for tomorrow would be the highs of April 23rd at 418.25. So if 418.25 crosses above, that would be very bullish for the SPY, and we can start trading above. The support levels will remain the same, or if you want, you could have a new level of support at the low of this candle here, which is at 416.65. But these would really still be the true support levels, in my opinion, on the S&P 500. And that's really it for the S&P 500 for today. So now this is the 15-minute chart of the Russell 2000, which is the IWM. Okay, and I said that a resistance level for today on the IWM, as you can see, was going to be this trend line that was prior support and then was acting as resistance at multiple times. Okay, so that level of resistance I said was at 226.50. We ended up opening above it. We ended up opening above this trend line and then retesting close to the trend line once more, and that basically held, right? So then on Twitter, I went and I posted that the new resistance level for the IWM was going to be 228.07, and we ended up crossing above it and trading above it for quite some time. But again, the IWM was still trading in a very tight range as well as the SPY, right? So a lot of that also, again, it just has to do with the indecision of earnings. So we're not sure. So a lot of funds and companies, etc., aren't sure which way earnings are going to go. So that's why a lot of the money that was in these larger indices and in these stocks, they didn't move as much. All right, so that's really it for the IWM as well. This level at 228.07 needs to hold as support, and basically then the next level of support is going to be, all right, so the resistance levels are going to obviously be today's highs at 228.70, right? So that would be the first resistance level, and then this trend line here that was, again, acted as support. We bounced off of it, and then it was chopping around, and then it acted as resistance afterward. So this level right here is going to be the next level of resistance at 230.40. All right. So now the levels of support that would need to hold are this level here, 228.07, and then this trend line here at 227.40. Aside from that, there's not much else to say on the IWM. Everyone is just really waiting to see what happens this week with the larger market in general, with the earnings. So this is a chart of the Nasdaq, all right? And I said that the resistance and support levels are as follows. We can see that the support level that needed to hold was 339.34, and we can see that it held pretty well. Into the morning, we did wick down below it, but then we crossed right back up, and we started trading in an uptrend for the rest of the day. And that primarily happened, in my opinion, because the Nasdaq was the weaker of the indices, and also because many, many large tech stocks are going to be reporting earnings. So as we know, so let me just go here. Okay, so as we know, larger tech stocks, right? Larger companies in general, as they're about to report earnings, the price of their stock tends to start climbing prior to their earnings date. All right, so for example, Apple, right? Apple is going to have earnings on April 28th, right? So something that happens with Apple and many of these other large tech companies is when they do have earnings, they tend to give me 1 second. Damn, I was looking for this brush. Okay. So, all right. So Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Google, Facebook, all of these larger tech stocks, they run up into earnings, right? So it's either perfectly they peak right before their earnings, or they run up a few days and they start falling right prior to their earnings. Okay. So, the last few times that if you look at the history of what Apple does and what these other large tech companies in general, larger companies in general do prior to earnings, is they begin to run up. People end up taking profits because people are indecisive about where this company is going to go, and then they start to fall. And then they end up reporting earnings that, either are going to be very good or very bad, but the movement already happened in the stock prior to the earnings information coming out. Okay. So that, in my opinion, I think is what we saw today in the Nasdaq into the the final few hours into the market, because today we were going to have Tesla earnings, and for the rest of the week we can see that Google is going to report earnings, Microsoft, AMD, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, all of these very, very large tech companies, FAANG companies, are reporting earnings this week. Especially because the Nasdaq was the overall winner for the entire month. As we can see, the Nasdaq outperformed the entire market. The Nasdaq, I feel, is going to be, a source of just people are just throwing money in anticipation of the earnings of reports coming out. And once a stock is going to report earnings the day of, or that same day, people are going to start taking profits. So that's something that we just have to take into consideration for the Nasdaq and the the overall market. So I said that these levels of resistance would need to break, and we ended up breaking 340.76. This was clear cut resistance the other day, and then today we broke above it. We fell back below a bit lower, and then we broke above, and now we're trading above it. So we did have a clean break right here. We made a retest of this level, and then we bounced back higher. So what needs to happen on the Nasdaq is basically these companies need to report good earnings. And again, the overall market was just trading in a very tight range, because again, there's not much you can do when there is speculation for these companies to report either good or bad earnings. If you were to buy into the QQQ or the SPY or the IWM, for example, you're completely at the whim of how these companies' earnings are reported. Okay, so let's just check out the new resistance and support levels for the Nasdaq. All right, so the new levels on the Nasdaq, this resistance is going to be today's highs at 341.91. There's no level of resistance that we were trading against, like similar to the SPY or the IWM, nothing diagonal. So we're just looking at horizontal levels of support and resistance here. So yeah, 341.91 is the next level of resistance. The levels of support are obviously the prior levels of resistance. So at 340.76 and at 339.33. Okay, so those levels need to hold. We're going to be looking at how, General Electric, all of these large companies, these are such important companies to report earnings. Visa, Google, Pinterest, Microsoft, AMD, Starbucks, FireEye. Look, this entire, all of these are so important. MGM, eBay, ServiceNow, Teladoc, Facebook, Apple. Trillions and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of companies are reporting earnings. And if, these companies report bad earnings, then the larger market and the broader market is going to do very, very bad. But if they do well, then the overall market is going to do very, very well. So you can see that large companies in multiple different industries are all reporting earnings this week. So yeah, we just have to take it one day at a time. Tomorrow before the open, UPS, General Electric, BP, Waste Management, a lot of these companies are going to report earnings. And then tomorrow after the close is going to be very, very important. It's going to be one of the most important days. AMD, Microsoft, and Google. Those are going to be really, really important companies reporting earnings for tomorrow. All right, so that's basically it for the main three indices. Let's go over the dollar real quick. All right, so now let's check out the dollar on a daily chart. And as you know, the dollar is obviously not doing too well. It failed at resistance and it crossed above on the MACD, which is it's a bullish sign. But the fact that the dollar is continuing to fall, even though there is a very bullish crossover on the MACD, that is a very bearish sign for the dollar. And if the dollar is very bearish, then stocks will continue to go up. All right, so now let's continue on to the next, crude oil. All right, so crude oil is continuing to hold this 20 exponential moving average, which is very, very important. And if crude oil is doing well, and if oil stocks in general, energy stocks are doing well, then the overall market means that is very, very healthy. Okay, so let's just see if the 20 exponential moving average can continue to hold at 6120. And yeah, as you can see that it's this entire uptrend, it's been acting as support, except here, and then it reclaimed it, and now it's it bounced off, and now it's trading above it again. So yeah, that's what we need to watch on crude oil. All right, so now let's go into Bitcoin and Ethereum. All right, so this is the chart of Bitcoin. All right, and we caught the bottom on Bitcoin absolutely perfectly. All right, we can see that the 47,000 level, which was the 78.6% fib level, held perfectly. On Twitter, I said that 46,500 to 47,000 would hold, and that's another reason why we bought into Mara, and it helped give confluence to our judgment of Bitcoin bouncing off of this level. And you can see this level from back in December 21st, and multiple touches. Every single time we touched, we basically bounced off. And I felt that today, or I felt that, when we bounced off of it recently, it would be no different. And that's exactly what happened. This was a huge move in Bitcoin, and our Mara calls that I posted were up over 100% on Twitter. So that was a very successful play. So now let's look at where Bitcoin can go. Okay, so I said that usually what happens is Bitcoin ends up testing at least to the 38.2% fib level. And that's also exactly what happened. So it touched the 38.2% fib level. Let me close this right here. So now it's easier to see. So it touched 53,830, right? And as we can see that it wicked above, but it did not reclaim it. So this is going to be a very important level for Bitcoin to reclaim. As you can see, the MACD is still very oversold, and this means that there's still room for the upside. Okay, and when there is, we're oversold at a resistance level, that is a very good sign that we can potentially cross above. And as we're crossing above on the MACD, the price of Bitcoin can potentially cross up as well. Okay, so that's something that we really need to watch. But overall, that was a beautiful trade. We called the bottom because it touched this level of, because it touched this trend line perfectly, right? And then we also called a beautiful price target to the top, to the upside, which was the 38.2% Fibonacci level. So the reason why I look for this level at least for an upside target is when you look at any sort of stock, any sort of anything, crypto, whatever you look at, usually whenever there is a huge flush down and we find support at a very strong level of support, it tends to bounce back up to this percentage level. Algorithms and basically they look for this level at least. And I said this in one of my YouTube videos, I think either yesterday or on Friday, I'm not sure, but I called this out and it worked out pretty perfectly. So yeah, now basically this level needs to break. And again, in the short term, if you want to look at support, these would be the levels, the 23.6% fib level, and obviously the low. But again, we just need to hold this trend line. So again, overall, I'm saying that 46,500 to 47,000 would be support. But if this level fails and we start to break lower, then that would be very, very bad for Bitcoin. But the reason why I don't think that would personally happen is because of Ethereum. All right, so that was basically it for Bitcoin. But Ethereum now. Ethereum is leading Bitcoin. So as you can see, Bitcoin is trading much lower. So if Ethereum was Bitcoin, Ethereum would be down here. Okay? And the fact that Ethereum is leading Bitcoin is a very, very bullish sign for Bitcoin, in my opinion. And that also gave me confluence to understand, hey, you know, Ethereum is still trading very, very high, but Bitcoin, you know, still needs to catch up. And we found support, and that helped me, you know, give you guys the signal for Mara on Twitter. And yeah, that worked out perfectly. So now Ethereum, I said that Ethereum needed to hold above 23,041 and 2316. So as you can see, we're trading very clearly above both of those levels, which is very, very good. And the MACD is still very oversold, which means that there's still potential room to the upside. And the fact that we have a oversold MACD at basically Ethereum's all-time highs at around that level, that is very, very bullish for Ethereum. And if it is bullish for Ethereum, then eventually the logic would tell you that, you know, Bitcoin needs to follow Ethereum eventually. All right, so overall, the crypto markets look very, very decent. Short term, we could fail off of this level, and what could happen is we can end up falling back potentially to this trend line somewhere around this level and then bouncing back. But if this were to happen, many people would become very, very bearish. And if this move downward were to happen, then the momentum might be very, very strong and actually break through this level of support. But, you know, we made our money on this bounce. I called this bottom pretty well. If we do end up breaking, then we have to, you know, reconsider our levels. But for now, the support and then the upward target worked out perfectly. So let's see if we can continue on higher. And the fact that Ethereum is basically trading at the equivalent of basically 60,000 plus, that is a very, very good sign for Bitcoin. All right, so that is basically it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, this is a much shorter video. Drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, put on your bell notifications for the channel. And yeah, I really, really appreciate you guys staying for this long. Overall, just be aware of this earnings calendar, because it's very, very important, and that's what the overall market is going to be keying off of for the rest of the week. All right, have an amazing day. I'll see you tomorrow.